Okay, here, now we're official. But before we get started, I wanted to make a few thank yous. One to Gabrielle Antolovich and Scott Spence for allowing us to use the wonderful Billy DeFrank LGBTQ Community Center for this celebration of Dick's life. This is the perfect venue. So thank you. We're so appreciative. We're welcome, says Scott from the back. This is a perfectly appropriate venue given Dick's lifetime of activism and advocacy for the LGBTQ community, and especially his role as co-founder of the Quatrefoil LGBTQ Library in Minnesota. And we're going to be hearing more about those projects. So thank you again, Gabrielle and Scott. Also, it takes a village to pull together an event, and it wouldn't have happened without Dana Treadwell, Scott Wakefield, and Carl Angadi on tech, Judy Bannister, Kim and Ron Spahn, Asia and Robert. Asia can't be here. She's off being glamorous. And John Hung, Dick's partner of many years, and absolutely everybody else who helped make today's celebration of Dick's life come to fruition. So included in today's speakers are both here and in San Jose, and in Minnesota and further afield. So all of us, whether we're in Zoom land or whether we're here in San Jose, it's a testament to the many lives that our friend Dick has touched. I'm not going to read the lovely obituary that Dick wrote, but it's easily available online if you just Google him. It's hither and yon. And many of you have probably visited his website, dickhewetson.net. But actually, speaking of the obituary, maybe I'll read the lovely testimony. Kim shared this with me a few minutes ago. So when she went to place the obituary at the San Francisco Chronicle, the fellow she talked to was Andrew Terranova, and he wrote her this email. Your uncle was a hero and an inspiration to me after reading the obituary. Thank you for allowing me to be part of his story. Without people like him, I wouldn't be able to live my life freely. Thank you, Richard. So this is from Andrew Terranova. So I think even Dick leaves a long legacy. Even people who didn't necessarily know him in person knows who he is and what he accomplished. So we were going to start with some Zoom people, but they may not be with us yet. So Judy, can we put you on the spot? And so first up is Judy Bannister. And
introduce myself.
All right, she needs no introduction.
Thank you. I'm always messing up these microphones, so I need to know from Scott. And besides, unfortunately, I have to look at the camera in order to be on Zoom. Okay, there we go. Is this okay? All right.
Closer to your mouth.
Closer to my mouth. Thank you. Carl is always telling me that. Get it closer to your mouth. Okay, we got to get this right. I did want to mention everybody should turn off your cell phones, please. And the bathroom is up those stairs over there if you need it. Just a minor housekeeping stuff. And we welcome everybody who came in on Zoom. Most members of the atheist community of San Jose who said they were coming to Dick's celebration of life said they are coming in on Zoom. So most of them are not here in person. Most of them are on Zoom. Okay, so brief introduction. My name is Judy Bannister. I'm a leader of the atheist community of San Jose. And Dick was a very strong member of our organization and several other, what do you call them, non-religious organizations, free thought organizations in the Bay Area. In particular, in addition to the atheist community, he was a very active member of our group. He also was an active member of the Humanist community in Silicon Valley, HCSV, and that group is well represented by our fabulous IT team who are here today, particularly over here, Scott and Carl over at the table, making this possible. It means that this is not just a small, tiny group of people in one place celebrating Dick's life. This is nationwide and even beyond. Okay, so they make it possible to celebrate Dick's life with people from across the country. So we really appreciate that skill set that they bring to us, and they're the best in the business, as you will see when you watch them operate. But Dick was most involved in what is called the San Francisco Bay Area Freedom from Religion Foundation. We have several people here from that group. So Dick was loved being all over the Bay Area and having events, setting up events, and bringing together free-thinking people from all over the San Francisco Bay Area. He was very enthusiastic, and he would always do things like, he was a gourmet, I think of him as Gourmet Dick, because he loved all these different restaurants. So he said to us, my husband and me one time, he said, okay, you've just got to come to this restaurant in San Francisco. It's one of the best landmark restaurants. You've got to come to our Freedom from Religion Foundation luncheon gathering in San Francisco. So we hop in the car and drive all the way for an hour just to go to this fancy restaurant. And it was lived up to Dick's hype. I mean, Dick was just gung-ho about the events that he and Dana and other leaders of FFRF, local FFRF, organized. So Dick Hewetson, I knew Dick Hewetson only in his late 80s and early 90s until he died at the age of 95. Well, for heaven's sake, I'm a demographer. By definition, that is elderly. But I never, ever saw Dick Hewetson as elderly. He was always standing up straight. He stood tall and strong. He was powerful emotionally. He was articulate. He had strong opinions and expressed them super well. And he was very unusual. He was an ex-minister, and he was called himself an atheist, a gay atheist man. And wow, that's an unusual combination. So I thought he was just the greatest. So I loved his enthusiasm, how outgoing he was. He was a powerful presence in our organizations, and he came around often because he was so excited about the events that we were having. So, and one thing I did want to mention was that even though I did not know Dick Hewetson in his LGBTQ+ world, I knew him in his non-religion, free thought world. Nevertheless, Dick Hewetson said to me more than once, hey, I'm so happy. I have a wonderful life with my wonderful lover and partner, John, and down in San Jose. And I just want you to know how happy I am and how wonderful my life is. He was just joyous. And he was a joyous atheist and a joyous LGBTQ man. A wonderful combination. So I did want to mention that the day before Dick died, that is on a Friday, the day before he died on Saturday, Dana Treadwell, you will hear from her, had let me know that Dick was going to die on Saturday. I said, what? What? I didn't know this. I didn't know he was that sick, for one thing. And so my husband Mark and I called him on the telephone. He picked up immediately. He was bedridden by that time. I assume I didn't see him, but I assumed he was sitting up in bed, and he was just, I couldn't believe it. He was lively. He was laughing. We expressed lots of mutual appreciation to one another. I told him how much we treasured him and how much we were going to miss him, and he said basically the same to us. And he was happy the day before he died, and he was very clear about his death and about dying and what that meant, and he faced it with courage and just ease. He was easy about it. He was good about it. He was happy about it. It was time. So he defined the time, he defined the place, he defined the situation. That's my model right there. That's the way to die, and California facilitates that. So the last thing I said to Dick on our phone call was, I said, Dick, I hope you're not going to have a deathbed conversion to Christianity. And he laughed. He said, nope, ain't going to happen. Okay, so there's one little thing that I want to add that Dana asked me to add about Dick, which I didn't even know until she told me. I got to get it up on my phone, excuse me, because it keeps going away. Sorry. Here we are. So Dana told me something about Dick Hewetson that I didn't know until today. So Dick died at age 95. And Dana said, I'm quoting Dana here, Dick also still enjoyed reading. He revealed to me that he had discovered the joy of reading at the tender age of 88. Big exclamation point. 88. Showing us all by example that it's never too late to try something new. He became an avid reader, making up for lost time, devouring mostly nonfiction books, with Howard Zinn, Andrew Seidel, and Catherine Stewart among his favorite authors. He read Dolores Cordell's Her Honor. She was the first African-American judge in Northern California, appointed by Jerry Brown. He became a fanboy. He emailed her, and long story short, she ended up meeting him for afternoon tea in downtown Sunnyvale 2 years ago. So in other words, the last years of Dick's life, I'm sure John can tell us this, were full of books, reading all the time, and just devouring books, something he didn't discover the value of until he was 88. So that's it for me. I just want to say that we all miss, in the atheist community of San Jose, we miss Dick big time, and we will continue to miss Dick Hewetson. He enriched our lives deeply, and we loved him. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. That was lovely. So I want to be mindful. Do we know whether Dan Barker's in the room? So I know he has other constraints. Shall we? Are you ready to roll, Dan? Can we make this happen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm remotely. I'm in Wisconsin, but I'm remote.
Well, you're here with us now, so you're not very remote. We're so happy to have you. Oh, now you're even bigger. Great. So take it away, Dan.
Well, thank you. Most of you know I'm the co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And I met Dick Hewetson in 1984. That year, I had just come out of the ministry. In January, I sent a letter to everybody saying that I was no longer a believer. And in September of that same year, I was invited to speak at the Freedom from Religion Foundation's convention in Milwaukee. And I met Dick there. And of course, we hit it off. He was a former minister. I was a former minister. And I was pleased at how much of a sense of humor he had, how funny he was. And so we decided, he and I and a couple other former ministers, the following year in Minneapolis in '85, we had a panel at the Freedom from Religion Foundation conference, a panel of ex-clergy. There were four of us. There was Dick, there was there was Charlie French, a former Baptist minister, and Don Shaw, a former, I think he was also Episcopal, like Dick was. And it was a fun time, and we didn't realize that at the time, but we think it was historical because had there ever been a panel or a collection of former ministers who are now non-believers, and that was the germ. I started collecting names, and at that time there were no email addresses, but connection with other former ministers, and over a few decades, including Dick and others, I collected maybe 30 or 40. People would call me, they'd read my book, and they'd say, I was a preacher too. And then some of you know that the philosopher Daniel Dennett and his colleague Linda Lascola published their paper about preachers who don't believe in the Journal of Evolutionary Psychology. I think that's what it was called. But in order to do their paper, they had to do this study through Tufts University. They needed to find former believers. And so Linda called me and she says, we want to talk to ministers who are not believers, but how do we find them? And I said, well, I know a few. And so I was able to give them some of the names, and they used some of those for their first study. And from that, the Clergy Project was born in 2011. The Clergy Project is former and even some currently active ministers who, some of them are still in the pulpit right now, who no longer believe, and some of them need an exit strategy. And so they will join this Clergy Project to compare notes, to meet others, to see what happened. And Dick was an early part of that, although he didn't stay involved for a long time. Today, there are more than 1,400 former clergy in the Clergy Project, and you can look it up at clergyproject.org. But it all started back there with that first panel that we had with the four of us in Minneapolis. And every year, Dick would come to FFRF conventions, and it got to be kind of comical because during our membership meeting, he would come to the microphone and he'd say, once again, I would like to advocate to have the convention in San Francisco, where he lived. And San Francisco is wonderful. And so we would have an advisory vote. And so finally, then we decided to go to San Francisco, basically because of his advice. But of course, it was a good city to visit. We had a convention there. And at the next convention, he got up into the mic and he says, well, now I don't have anything to say after all these years of advocating to come to San Francisco. And he was always ready for a laugh. And I think he only missed one convention in all those years. He started back in the 70s. Back, I think maybe 78 or 9 was when he came to the first convention when I was still preaching. But what a good friend. And when we learned that he had decided to end his life in July, we were in Chattanooga at a convention for the 100th anniversary of the Scopes trial, which took place in Dayton, Tennessee in 1925. So we were planning this huge conference. So there was no way I could get away from that. It was just a huge event with FFRF and Center for Inquiry. An amazing event, by the way, which you can look at online, celebrating science over superstition. But it was that Saturday of that weekend that Dick had decided he was going to end his life. And Dana told us that he really wanted to hear the song Nothing Fails Like Prayer again before he went. And so the only thing I could do was I broke away from the meeting and I just stood out on the street there with my cell phone and I called him up and he said, I thought you were going to call. That's good. So we laughed and we told stories. We compared memories. And I told him that at the board meeting 2 days earlier, our executive board had wanted me to tell him that they were thinking of him. They appreciated how much he had meant to the movement, how much his personality, and he said, thank you. And I said, so I should tell them you said hello. And he said, nope, tell them I said goodbye. And I said, well, Dick, was this a hard decision for you to make? And he said, nope, wasn't hard at all. I'm ready to go. And he even joked, I forget the exact words, but he sang part of a song that went something like, if you get to heaven before I do, drill a hole and poke me through. Ah, ha, ha, ha. He was laughing about it. And it was surreal because he and I both knew that in a few hours he would be dead, he would be gone. And it's how do you hang up on something like that? You know, and it was just very touching and very real to know that even to the end of his life, he kept his mind together, he kept his ideas together, he kept a sense of humor, and he lived a life well lived. And I told him that, and I said our board wanted to tell you as well that we really appreciate. So then I sang for him just one verse. I sang to him, the farmers pray for precipitation, then they say, in God we trust. Then along comes a drought and dries the crops out and turns their prayers into dust. The next time they need some assistance, they should take the advice of Mark Twain, who said, it's better to check the weather report before you pray for rain. Nothing fails like prayer. Nothing fails like prayer. Use your mind and you will find that nothing fails like prayer. And he said, thank you. He really liked that psalm because of the message of the psalm. So, I used to be a preacher like Dick, and I could preach for hours and hours, but I think I'll just end it there, and I'll stay connected here and maybe come back. If there's time, maybe I'll do the song Imagine. But we're all going to miss Dick, but we know that he lives on, not in some supernatural way. He doesn't live on in some spooky spiritual way, but he lives on in our memories. He lives on in our hearts, and he lives on in the lingering effects of the good deeds that he did through his life. And that's the best kind of afterlife I think any of us could hope for.
Thank you so much, Dan. That was wonderful. And we played recordings of that song after you had to hang up. We listened to that several times before Dick drank the magic potion. So we have another Zoom presenter. Is Chuck Emery in the house? Not yet. Okay. Do we want to play Dana's recording? Could that be the next thing? I'm trying to figure out. Oh, there she is. So Dana Treadwell, live and almost in person.
I'm sorry, I forgot to share. Forgot to do the Zoom share, sorry. Share. Start over.
Hi, I'm Dana Treadwell. I met Dick through the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And though we were practically neighbors here in Silicon Valley, Dick used to get quite a kick out of telling people that we met in Madison, Wisconsin at an FFRF convention there in 2019. I want to thank Judy Saint for introducing us there. Dick would say that these conventions were the highlight of his year. He called them the Academy Awards ceremony for the humanist community. Now, shortly after meeting Dick, I asked him what a lot of people asked. Why did he leave the priesthood? And sometimes he'd be very flippant, right? He'd say, I saw the light, or wouldn't you? But in all seriousness, he told me that he was giving his sermon one Sunday, and he realized that his congregation would believe whatever he said. And he thought that no one should have that kind of power over people. And this was one of the seeds that caused him to question whether or not the church was a force for good. And he did, more insight or more research and analysis into this, and it eventually led him to leave the priesthood, become an atheist and embrace his homosexuality. And I marvel at the bravery that this took. The priesthood was his livelihood and his community, and yet he gave it all up at the age of 42 and reinvented himself. And this is why he was an early promoter for the Clergy Project, which helps clergy who want to get out of the priesthood for whatever reason. Dick demonstrated his fearlessness again in looking after the high school-aged son of a friend of his. Dick loved watching people's astonished reactions when he would tell them that he was once a PTA president. He would get quite a laugh, but yet it's so in character. Dick stepped up and volunteered to fill a leadership gap in order to contribute to his community. He showed incredible bravery yet again in moving out to San Francisco at the age of 62. He retired and headed west. He didn't know where he'd live, and he knew one person out here. As he says in his memoir, at noon on April 8, 1992, I drove across the Bay Bridge and saw the city of San Francisco sparkling in the sun. I smiled and said aloud, "I'm home." When people ask me how long it took to adjust to retirement or to San Francisco, my reply is 30 seconds. Skipping forward a few decades to his life in the South Bay, the local chapter of FFRF gave Dick a venue for his activism to support and safeguard the separation of church and state. It should be known that Dick was such a believer in this principle that he went to court with the help of FFRF to get his monthly housing stipend from the church taxed. Though they lost the case in court, it was a noble effort and completely in line with Dick's unwavering desire to fight for fairness, even though it was against his own financial interests. For our local chapter, Dick instigated a project to get a poster displayed in the Embarcadero BART station. He designed it around a picture that was taken when Dan Barker came to help kickstart our chapter. Dick added text that reads, "Join us in keeping religion out of government as the framers of our Constitution intended. We are your neighbors. We are the San Francisco Bay chapter of the Freedom from Religion Foundation." We currently use the poster as part of our tabling display at local farmers markets. And at 94, Dick was still tabling at the Sunnyvale and Palo Alto farmers markets. And I wish that we had videos of his encounters at these events with people who wanted to discuss any aspect of the separation of church and state. These interactions were something to behold. Dick would calmly, with his disarming manner and his charming Midwestern accent, and his detailed knowledge of the Bible, educate them about cases of, instances of abortion in the Bible. He would cite passages about slavery. He would discuss Bible inconsistencies. And if you were a believer, you really didn't want to get him going on about Leviticus and hypocrisy. He was a tabling MVP, and I wish you could have all seen him in action. On to bridge. As I'm sure you all know, Dick loved bridge. No offense to John, who was the love of Dick's life, but bridge was a close second. He taught me how to play bridge online during the pandemic, and as part of the package, he introduced me to his wonderful bridge group comprised of longtime friends, mostly Cal grads, it turns out. Go Bears. And I am so thankful that he introduced me to this incredible game and lovely group of humans. I was with Dick that Friday morning when he told his beloved bridge group that this would be his final morning playing with them. After beautiful, heartfelt expressions of caring and understanding, they all played their traditional set of hands. And I want to say hats off to this group for knowing Dick and showing their respect by not sandbagging that morning. So Dick, who still had all of his marbles. Well, he would claim he'd lost a few, but anyway, he won fair and square that morning. It was just a perfect send-off. As Dick expressed in his obituary, he was frustrated by his inability to participate in activism against the current U.S. administration. Combine that with his failing health that took a steep decline after he contracted an infection at the end of last year. And he felt that he had to go while he could. One of the criteria of California's end-of-life law is that you must be able to administer the medications by yourself. I told Dick that there would be wonderful tributes to him in his honor, and I wanted him to be there to hear the great things that his family and friends have to say. You know, couldn't we do this in reverse order? But he laughed and he was set. He had chosen the date and time. So I asked what he wanted to happen that morning. And he said that he would like to hear his favorite FFRF song, Nothing Fails Like Prayer. So that Saturday morning, Dan Barker called and sang to his friend, as you heard. Later that morning, Dick wanted the song played again so that his niece and nephew could hear it, so we played a version off of YouTube. Dick also wanted to hear John Lennon's Imagine and songs from West Side Story, which was the first musical that Dick saw on Broadway. Nothing Feels Like Prayer worked its way in there for a third time. We also played Climb Every Mountain so that he could have nuns singing to him. We didn't have time to line up the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. He wanted to hear then Nothing Fails Like Prayer one last time. And as Dick's niece Kim pointed out, he wiggled his toes to the beat before embarking on his very peaceful exit. So what a life, you know. He was quite an example for us all. Dick never stood on the sidelines. He is already greatly missed, and I want to thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dana. That was lovely. And I think Greg is with us, so Scott is going to hand the microphone over to Greg. Sorry, Chuck, I beg your pardon. Chuck. Thank you, Scott.
Greg, do you see Chuck? Greg, do you see Chuck? Maybe he left.
Oh. Well, shall we keep going and maybe he will reappear?
Greg, do you see Chuck? He's muted.
No, he's on mute.
Oh, okay. Unmute yourself and tell us a story.
We still can't hear you.
You're on mute, Chuck.
Chuck, you need to unmute. Hold down the Alt key and press the letter A.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
Welcome aboard.
Okay, I'm sorry it took so darn long. I'll try to get in a better position where you can see me. Dana gave such an eloquent talk that I don't know what I can add to it except to say that for folks of you who don't know Bridge, Bridge is sort of like is to all other card games like chess is to checkers. It's a very complicated game that takes quite a few lessons and classes to learn. And Dick told us a story that one time he was it clear and was in a little bridge group, but they were threatening to discontinue the group unless they had somebody to teach bridge. So Dick, with his many talents, as you've already heard Dana describe, went ahead and decided that he'd teach the class himself. And so he sat down, as he joked, he used to be just one step ahead of the class, but he went ahead and did the class, and it was very clear when he joined our group that he was a pretty darn good player. And we had many moments of laughter and everything else. And I double second what Dana said about his courage. We all admired the courage of his statement to us personally, that he loved us and felt confident enough that we would support him. And therefore, and he ended by playing what I think was one of the best games of his entire time of playing with us. And so hats off, Dick.
Thank you. And I'm not a bridge player, but I learned pretty quickly, do not call Dick Monday, Wednesday, or Friday morning. You will get in hot water. So don't even think about it. One other person said she wanted to talk, Justine Wong. Is she here? Are you here? Oh, good. Take it away, Justine.
Hi, I'm Justine Wong, and I met Dick at Redwood Villa in Mountain View. One of the first things he asked me to do is take him to AAA and pick up some maps of San Jose. He wanted to get a feel for what San Jose was like. He knew the way he got here, but he didn't have a sense of space and what was in San Jose. And when he moved to Brookdale, they were going to have a special drive through San Jose, and he signed up for it, but it didn't happen. And then there was a second time that he tried to go, and he still didn't get to go. So hopefully he can look upon us and see what San Jose is all about. And I got lost on the way over here because I know where San Jose is, but I thought you guys were over at the Humanist place that used to be on the Alameda, which is now the Presbyterian Church. I don't know. And so Google's map sent me down Race Street. And I said, this doesn't seem right. So I apologize for being late, but I told the two ladies that I saw in the church parking lot, I said, well, maybe Dick's going to have a nice laugh that I kind of was a little late, but he's already where he's supposed to be, wherever that is. And thank you for having us. And John, I didn't recognize you with no hair. Thank you.
I'm just going to make a quick comment so everybody knows. When you're speaking to this microphone, hold it like you're going to swallow it, like this.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Justine. And yeah, Steve. Yeah, please.
Thanks. I'm not good with microphones either, so let me know. I wanted to make a comment about, or just let you guys know that of some of the many lives that Dick touched over, his long life, including the gay and lesbian atheist and humanist group, which Dick founded in 1993, soon after he moved to San Francisco. The story he told me was that he was part of a national group, the Gay and Lesbian Atheist and Humanist. We call it GALA, the acronym. And they had a directory with everybody's name and phone number on it nationwide. So when he moved to San Francisco, he looked in the directory and called everybody in the Bay Area and invited them to his apartment for coffee one Sunday morning, because he knew everybody would be available Sunday morning. So they came, they had coffee that morning, and it was such a good discussion. Somebody said, let's do this again. And they did it again the following month. And that was 1993. And we are still meeting once, or now we're meeting twice a month. When we went to Zoom, we started meeting twice a month. And I just wanted to let everybody know that we've been meeting for over 30 years because of the group that Dick started.
Wow.
Thank you. So are there others either here or on Zoom who, oh, yes. Okay, Steve Peterson, take it away.
Muted. So, Steve Peterson, I'm a founding member of Minnesota Atheist, as was Dick Hewetson, and his partner at the time, David Irwin. In 1991, they both helped get our organization started. And Dick, being instrumental, of course, was an integral part of our organization. And as we know, 92, he retired from the state of Minnesota. And we knew that, so we had a celebration, and we presented him with an honorary membership. And he had told us about his retirement, and he said, I'm also getting a pension from my 20 years that he was a minister. And as we were all a little depressed that he was going to leave, he announced he was going to donate his first ministry retirement check to Minnesota Atheist. and of course, the mood all changed into happy ovation. And that's the way Dick just kind of went about life. My partner and I visited Dick maybe somewhere around 2000 when he was living in San Francisco. It was quite a while ago, but not long after he moved. And this really doesn't have anything to do with anything except for you people in San Francisco will understand this. He took us out to the Outer Bay to a cafe of which you could look out on the ocean. And there was this island out there. He said, well, that's Seal Island, but the seals aren't there anymore. And later on, we were in the tourist area, and he said, I really don't like going down to the wharf in the tourist area, but I want to show you something. And so we go down there, we're walking around, we get to this chain link fence, and he says, you remember that island that we looked at that there's nothing on out on the ocean? He said, well, the sea lions all moved down here into the wharf and they took over the floating docks. And he just got the biggest kick out of that. And I'd heard about that even in Minnesota. I found it kind of humorous. But he said, if you want to stay here, that's okay. But he says, I wouldn't stay here if I were you. So we went on and toured San Francisco with him after that. And I had attended, I've been a member of FFRF for quite a few years too, nowhere near as long as Dick was. And we had been to conventions with him. Every photo that I have of Dick, he's got this huge smile on him. And that was just who he was. He was a happy person who managed through life, and it was great to know him. He lived a great life, and we'll miss him. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jim?
Yes.
Jim, my name is Larry By, and I'd like to say a few words too.
Oh, good. Thank you, Larry.
Hi there. Jim and John and Dick's friends and family from various places. I'm glad to join you. I'm joining you today from Marin County, up near the city of San Francisco. My relationship with Dick goes way back to the 70s in Minneapolis, the earliest days of the LGBTQ movement. And as I think many of you know, in those early years after Stonewall, there were tens of thousands of folks coming out, mostly young, lots of new organizations being born everywhere in the country. A movement was really kind of getting born. Minnesota was a focal point, in part because of its progressive history and tradition, but also because of the path-breaking activism of many people, but especially a guy named Steve N. Dean, who was a kid from Bloomington, Minnesota, a University of Minnesota graduate, as I am, who worked as a coat check at Minneapolis's most popular gay bar, Sutton's Place. Steve almost single-handedly lobbied the Minneapolis and St. Paul city councils to pass anti-discrimination ordinances in the middle of the decade. And Steve, by the way, went on to stand up the Gay Rights National Lobby and found the Human Rights Campaign, which is today the nation's largest LGBTQ advocacy group. It was impossible at the time to organize LGBT people en masse. It was still too early. The idea was too controversial. People felt they had too much to lose to come out, and let alone to get involved. But Dick was there. Here was this former Midwestern country pastor, a generation older than all the rest of us, 20-somethings that constituted the body of activists at that point in the movement. Kids of the counterculture, the Vietnam anti-war movement, the McCarthy and McGovern presidential campaigns. I can still remember Dick. The scene of Dick in a sea of 20-somethings in the bar. The scene of Dick as the oldest guy in every meeting, the oldest person in every meeting. He looked sort of at the time like someone's father or uncle because of his age and even more his conservative appearance. He looked so out of place, out of sync with the zeitgeist. But of course, Dick was very much in sync with the times in his own way. Basically, he could be counted on to contribute money, even though he had only a modest income. Steve at one point said that when he ever truly was desperate for funds, he knew he could always call Dick Hewetson and get a few $100s. This is in the 70s. And of course, the rest of us had no money because we were kids. He would always show up. He would always do the work. He organized on the issue within his union. He helped to lobby both city councils for the anti-discrimination ordinances, and he helped later in the campaign against repeal of the St. Paul Ordinance, which took place in 1978. Dick later went on, of course, to become involved with the Humanist movement, which was a cause dear to his heart, and the Quatrefoil Library. Dick and I didn't really become friends, though, until he moved to San Francisco in his retirement years, although it's really hard to use the term retirement. As many of you have already pointed out with regard to Dick, he was active in everything. Adult learning things at UCSF, history tours of the Castro neighborhood. At one point, he wrote a history of the Minnesota Civil Liberties Union and its involvement in the gay rights issue. His approach to aging was, I think, truly an inspiration to all of us, as many of us have noted today. A few years not long after he moved to the city, actually, he said their invitation came for his 80th birthday party, and it was at a sort of impressive location south of Market in the city. And what a surprise it was when we walked in to see more than 200 people. And I thought to myself, this is quite a turnout for a guy who's only been in town for a few years. I think Dick touched folks wherever he went. Throughout all of his years, he had this incredible sense of humor, as others have pointed out today, and what glee he exuded when he laughed. You know, I just noticed that Dick died. Dick died exactly 49 days ago. And in much of Asia, 49 days marks the final moving on from this life. So farewell, Dick. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you for that loving tribute. Are there more people on Zoom who are wanting to speak? No pressure, just an open invitation. I have a few things I'd like to say, and then John has shared a few remarks with me that I'm going to present on his behalf. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Is there anybody else here who'd like to say a few words? Again, no pressure, just an invitation. And then what I thought, so I'll say my remarks. Whoops. Melinda, do you want to say a few words?
I just wanted to say, yeah, I knew about Dick as a kid. Like I came from a very progressive family. We're a bunch of atheists, and I just want to say I have such appreciation for him and for all of you who who speak such good words about him, because he like I remember my dad talking about him when I was a little kid, and I was like, who's this guy Dick? And my dad talked about him. So I just want to say thank you. I just want to say thank you so much to everybody, and I just want to remember him because he was an amazing person. So thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And we're all in agreement. He was an amazing person. Um, any other Zoom people? What I thought I would do is read my remarks, share John's remarks, and then hopefully Dan will still be here and can help us close this tribute by leading us in a sing-along of Imagine, which was one of Dick's favorite songs. Does that sound like the right plan? Um, so Dick and I met when I was head of the James C. Hormel Gay and Lesbian Center in the new main library. And Dick had been advising one of my librarian colleagues, Jerry Roth, about books on atheism. And Dick told Jerry, you need more books and you need better books. And Jerry told me, you've got to meet this guy. So Dick and I met, and Jerry was absolutely right. We hit it off right away. And Dick was involved with so many organizations, as we've heard, I couldn't keep up with them. And he invited me to either attend or join or present at many of them. And I remember when he moved from his apartment right below Twin Peaks, eventually into the Broadmoor, he was elated. The meals, the laundry, the housekeeping services. He said, oh, I wish I'd done this years ago. And after many more years in the city, he finally moved down the peninsula. One, because he was getting tired of the urban drama, but also to be nearer to John. So our farewell San Francisco lunch wasn't as poignant as it might have been because we both knew that we would be staying in touch. Dick and I were excited to attend the first GLBT Archives, Libraries, Museums, and Special Collections Conference. It might sound a little dull to the rest of you, but this was a special conference being held in the Twin City for the very first time in 2006, co-hosted by the Treader Collection and the Quatrefoil Library. When Dick learned that I'd never been to the Twin Cities, he arranged for a friend to drive us around so I got a sense of Dick's old stomping grounds. And one of the many highlights of that afternoon was visiting the brand new Minneapolis Public Library designed by Cesar Pelle. But the more important highlight, of course, was having heard so much about it, I finally got to visit Dick's love child, the Quatrefoil Library. And he was justifiably proud as he pointed out its various features. It had certainly come a long way since its founding in Dick and David's apartment. And now, all these years later, Quatrefoil is getting ready to turn 40. Dick often said, the Quatrefoil Library is the legacy of which I am most proud. I appreciated attending Dick's 80th birthday party at Mission Creek Park in San Francisco. As you said, it was quite the event. I didn't realize there were 200 people there, but there were a lot of people. And who were we all? And he called out all the various constituents he was involved with, the Bridge Players, CLEAR, Freedom from Religion Foundation, Gala, and many others. And my partner, Alan, was particularly impressed when Dick assured all the atheists that they were beyond belief. Lots of phone calls, emails, visits, and dinners with Dick and John over the intervening years. And even when Dick's mobility was compromised, he never lost his sense of humor and that famous raucous laugh. And John was always a saint, patiently making sure that Dick's every need was met. The roast for Dick's 90th birthday in May 2020 became one of the early COVID casualties. We had planned to host it at the Sequoias, and then suddenly things needed to shift. But there's a recording of it if you poke around. And in my remarks, I said that Dick had asked me to contribute something to the history of the Quatrefoil Library. And I see myself quoted as saying, we always look for Dick to say all those things that nobody else dares say. And one other thing that Dick often told me was, people must think my name is someone. Whenever it's suggested that someone take care of this or that, it always ends up falling to me. Someone. As Dick's health continued to wane, he was adamant about exploring his end-of-life options. With my encouragement, he applied for and was accepted for Final Exit Network's support services. And when his physical abilities rendered that unworkable, he was accepted for MAID, California's medical aid in dying. The last few times we spoke, it seemed like he was losing steam until the order came. 1 o'clock on Saturday. Jim, you're my rock. I want you here. It wasn't a request, it was a command. Of course, I canceled all my plans, and when I got there, I was surprised to see not sad or losing steam at all. He was full of piss and vinegar. Um, Once he had made the difficult decision, John told me, he had a lot more energy. He had been exhausting himself. Well, should I do this? When should I do this? But once the decision was made, he was clear-headed and more alive than he'd ever been. Always a pioneering, iconoclastic trendsetter, I think Dick might have been a tiny bit disappointed to learn that he was not the very first person at his senior facility to use MAID, but he was right up there. And quatrefoil notwithstanding, I think Dick's proudest moment was being included in Who's Who in Hell. So now I'd like to share the remarks that John sent me. Do you want to come up and stand so I don't? We're going to see if we can keep each other from crying. So this, I'm reading these, but these are John's words. Actually, maybe, would you have the microphone on? We're not starting out on that. So John says, Dick always introduced me to his friends by saying, it took me 80 years to find the right man. I was very happy to be his partner, to be with him for 15 unforgettably happy and joyful years. It was too short, but both of us had known and expected that since the first time we decided to be together because of the age gap, as he reminded me at the beginning of our relationship. Dick had a very big heart and was compassionate to marginalized people, especially homeless and low-waged workers that served in the places where he was living. His big heart and compassion caused him frustration and depression sometimes later in life, as he confronted the privilege of friends who had no good comments or looked down on these people in his daily life. Also, he was very unhappy with our country today, with lying, cheating, and violence for money and power without any humanity or compassion. I told him that he should not take these bad things too seriously, as he could not do anything to change it, and it affected him negatively mentally, but it was difficult for him not to do so. One time I joked and told him that he was a good person with a big heart because he got trained and influenced in seminary for future ministries. He strongly disagreed and said he was born with a big heart, his instinct, not by church's training. It surprised me that Dick's best category for Jeopardy was the Bible, even though he had been an atheist for such a long time. He still memorized the Bible a lot and all the important days in the Christian calendar year. He sometimes reminded me to go to church on a certain day because it was obligatory and it was on a weekend, and he suspected I'd forgotten. Also, he still remembered the history of Catholics and Episcopal saints, which I sometimes asked him, as I didn't know. One solid reason that our relationship lasted, and I was happy to stay and take care of him until the end, was because I thought Dick deserved to be loved and taken care of as he had always cared for others, even when later in life he could not do much to help them besides talking and advising. When he was in his hospice bed, he told me a few times that he had been very happy with me for the last 15 years and that it was okay if I wanted to walk away or set up another way to care for him now. I told him I had decided to be with him until the end, even before anything happened to him, because he deserved to be happy and loved. I was happy to take care of him and tried to be with him as much as possible, since I had known I didn't have much time with him anymore. Dick always had much consideration for his friends and others. He always volunteered to do anything others didn't want to do in the organizations that he participated in. He was used to going along with others' suggestions or plans or wanting to please them. And then he complained to me when he got home that he didn't like their suggestion, their plan, or the place or restaurant that the others wanted to go. Also, in our relationship, Dick always let me decide and plan most of the things that I wanted. Dick wanted me to be happy and enjoy being with him. Therefore, he went along with me on everything, even if he didn't want to, some of the time, as I knew. He told me he didn't want to travel anymore when we first met, but he went along and traveled with me on many trips, the Asia trip, Taiwan, Thailand, and Vietnam, the Alaska cruise trip, the Rocky Mountaineer in Canada, Las Vegas, Grand Canyon, and many trips to visit his friends and family in Minnesota and to attend the Freedom from Religion Convention in Madison. In our relationship, we only had one problem of deciding which restaurant we will go out to eat every weekend. Both of us tried to make sure our partner was having a good dinner and tried to suggest a restaurant that he liked. But both of us also knew exactly what our partner disliked at our favorite restaurant. For example, Dick liked Italian restaurants or restaurants that had good desserts. I could not eat cheese and I don't like dessert. Vice versa, I like restaurants with strong tastes and spicy food, but Dick could not eat spicy food and didn't much care for non-Western food. We always said, oh, any restaurant is okay to each other, and avoided choosing a restaurant. It happened every weekend. It's a lovely and good memory as I think back on it, as we discussed the Eat Out restaurant every weekend. So I think that concludes the remarks. And if Dan is still here, would you be willing to lead us in a sing-along of Imagined?
I still am here.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Are you hearing an echo or is it just me?
I think it's just you. Does anybody
Okay.
hear? Yeah. So will you be able to hear us?
Well, let's just all try it. There is a link in the chat to the lyrics if anyone needs the lyrics, but we could just start a cappella and sing. I guess this was Dick's favorite hymn, right? Written by John Lennon. Are we ready to begin? Shall I wait 5 or 10 seconds?
Oh, I think, are you bringing up the lyrics for us? Oh, yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, I think we're ready to roll. What do you think,
All right.
Scott?
So it's always good to
Okay.
start a song lower than you think. So imagine, let's start here. Imagine. Are we ready?
Yep.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you tried. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. Ooh, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Now to verse 3. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood and sisterhood of woman and man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. Ooh, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us, and the world will live as one.
Thank you so much, Dan. What a wonderful way to end this tribute to Dick. Thank you all to the people out in Zoom land. Thanks to all of you here with us in San Jose at the Billy DeFrank Center. Thank you to the center, Scott. Thank you to our technicians who made this all happen, and to Dana and Judy and all of you. And now I hate to tell you this, people in Zoom, but we have a beautiful buffet that Ron and Robert and Kim have put together. Oh, and also I wanted to point out that the slideshow, John put together all those images. So thank you all so much for celebrating Dick's amazing life, and imagine.
Imagine.